It's really great that some of us have the resources to go places to seek out the opinion of a specialist. If someone does not have those resources, do you have any suggestions on how they may access resources, whether it's financial or just support and how to find them?
Regarding folks who don't necessarily have the ability to travel far to see specialists, the first thing I'd say is use that myeloma crowd directory, and chances are you'll find a specialist pretty well close within the area that you live, certainly if it's any kind of urban or suburban area that you live in. If not, today we have tools like virtual connections where you can visit a specialist over your computer, and most are happy to do so. And the other thing I always found is that they are particularly happy to work with your local oncologist, not to necessarily push a treatment, but to give their advice. And if you have a good local oncologist, chances are they accept that advice. If they don't accept the advice, you may want to consider changing local oncologists, because you're talking to a myeloma specialist who's seen hundreds of patients compared to the local oncologist, hematologist, who might be seeing 1, 2, or 10 patients. And it's impossible to keep up with the research of an oncologist, of myeloma, for an oncologist who sees all types of different cancers. So it's awfully important to get that second opinion and then make that myeloma specialist part of your myeloma team.
Well, thank you, Jack. We appreciate that. Jerry, I was just going to ask you two really quickly. I know that support groups are sponsored by the International Myeloma Foundation, IMF. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in addition to Myeloma Crowd, they also have a list of specialists somewhere on their site. Is that correct?
I believe so. I know when I was first diagnosed, hadn't really, it took me a year and a half probably before I really thought about a specialist. And I kind of found my specialist through Gary Peterson has a website talking about the importance of being with a specialist and seeing it. And he gathers all kinds of data from hospitals and whatnot and listed all the top specialists. And that's kind of how I went in and said, okay, well, if we're going to see somebody, let's see one of the top people. Even if that meant traveling a good distance across the country, which we did. But yes, the myeloma.org is the International Myeloma Foundation website, and you can get information there. I do think probably right now Myeloma Crowd has maybe the best gathering of that information and a list that's, you know, simple to find. But I'm sure that most of the sites, the MMRF, I'm sure they have a listing as well. They also have listings of support groups and specialists.
Even if they don't have listings of specialists like Myeloma Crowd, they all have helplines, 800 numbers and such, which you can call. And if you're calling from Timbuktu and you want to know the closest myeloma specialist to you, those helpline folks are very knowledgeable, have their own list, and are certainly able to give you that specialist information.
That's awesome. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it. And I know that newly diagnosed patients will appreciate that too, because as I've read through a lot of the literature, also, I can reaffirm a lot of the statements that it has been shown that outcomes are generally better if you see a specialist and have them coordinate care with your local oncologist. So I also highly recommend seeking the care of a specialist, or at least having a consult with a specialist at the beginning of your myeloma journey as you start to move through the myeloma path. Back to the access to financial resources, if somebody does want to seek the care of a specialist, if somebody is not able to, I guess the telemedicine visits are ideal. There are a couple of centers from what I've heard that do like to see somebody in person, or maybe there's a treatment that they would like to seek out or participate in, but need financial resources. Sherry, I know you have some information on this. Can you share any resources, any websites, any anywhere somebody can go if they're looking for resources to help seek out a specialist, to help seek out treatment so they can travel somewhere. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I know that the Leukemia Lymphoma Society has grants and money that they help patients with travel, with co-pays, those kind of things. So the LLS is a good resource for that. That's the first one that comes to mind. Jack may have some other ideas of those resources.
Other organizations are called HealthWell and such. There's a good listing of financial resources on the IMF website because they do keep changing. Sometimes funds, they will run out of funds. For particular drug help, copays and such, don't be shy also about going to the particular pharma company that manufactures that drug. They may or may not be able to help. They can almost always help if you're not a Medicare patient. But even if you're a Medicare patient, if you've gone through other avenues, they can often offer help there as well. I think the particular question that you asked, though, in terms of getting someone to help pay for your visit to get a second opinion and such, that's a difficult problem. I see that patients do have that issue. If you're going locally, second opinions still might cost in the $600, $800 range. They may want to do their own lab tests as opposed to the ones you've already done. So it can be expensive, but I guess I would say if you go to that support group in your area, they may have other avenues of support that they've tried and have been successful. And again, try those helplines for the various advocacy organizations, the IMF, MMRF, Myeloma Crowd. I mean, they may have ideas at the time to get financial help.